What's up guys, Agent here again with another build video, and today we're going to be going over the Stamina Warden Healer. So this is a build that I spent quite a bit of time kind of scratching my head over, and that's because Stamina Warden Healers, or Stamina Healers in general, kind of have two difficulties to overcome when it comes to healing endgame content, so like vet trials. So the idea was to make a stamina healer that's capable of doing vet trials while not giving up too much in terms of utility that the typical magicka healer would be able to provide. So the two things that problems that I had to kind of figure out how to get around was the overall lack of stamina source of minor berserk. So basically, I had to find a way to include combat prayer in my rotation somehow without running out of magicka too quickly. And then the second thing I had to figure out was orbs. There is no stamina equivalent of orbs or shards. And so, just like with Combat Prayer, I had to figure out how to include, one or two orbs, maybe every rotation or every other rotation, in order to, do my part as a healer and provide my group with synergies and resources. And so that was kind of the struggle that I kind of had to go along with, and I didn't really want to do a hybrid build because once you start, splitting your resources between magic and stamina, your stamina heals end up becoming weaker as a result. And so I didn't want to give up too much when it came to stamina. So hopefully this build that I have here will kind of let us be able to use Combat Prayer fairly often, maybe not as often as a Magicka Templar would or a Magicka Warden Healer would, but often enough that we won't see that big of a drop in downtime, assuming we have a second healer. Plus, we'll still be able to get out orbs every now and then for that resource returned. So hopefully this build accomplishes that. So I haven't tested this build obviously in any vet trials. None of the groups that I run with, because I run with primarily progression runs. So we're doing things like Hoff, and helping people learn how to do, the Craglorn trials, the vet Craglorn trials. I don't really have a reason to bring a stamina healer because that just makes things a lot more difficult for people who are trying to learn the trials. So that's why you will probably never see me run one of these in a vet trial, just because it is not conducive to the environment and the atmosphere that my raid guilds try to encourage. So just like our other build videos, we'll be going over our gear, our CP points, our skill bars, go over race and attributes, and then we'll talk about kind of what this rotation will look like, kind of what the stamina healer brings to the table that the magicka healer might not be able to bring, and things like that. So let's get things started first with our gear. So gear was a little bit of a challenge because we can't necessarily use spell power gear because that gives us a lot of magicka boosts, which would end up making our stamina heals a lot weaker because those will scale off of our weapon damage and our max stamina and not our max magicka and spell damage. So I kind of had to figure out a way to basically provide that same level of boost. And so we're going with the Powerful Assault. So this is a PvP set. You can get it from the Imperial City Sewers, or you can buy it off of guild traders, and this is basically the stamina version of spell power cure. So whenever you cast an assault ability, you increase the weapon and spell damage of up to 4 friendly targets within 10 meters of you by 164 for 15 seconds. Now the 2, 3, 4 piece effects, it's max health, max stamina, weapon damage, which is really nice because with the additional max health, now we don't have to worry about putting additional points into health for attributes, so we can pretty much dump them into stamina or magicka. So I'll talk about that a little bit when we go over our attributes. So that additional health is actually quite useful when it comes to using Powerful Assault. And then the 3 and 4 piece are obviously useful, max stamina and weapon damage. Now obviously the 5 piece is not quite as strong as Spell Power Cure. I believe when Spell Power Cure is completely golded out, it is a 265 or 64 additional boost, so we're losing out on 100 base about 100 base weapon and spell damage boost, which obviously gets buffed by all of their percentage increases and things like that. So it's actually, we're losing out on a fair amount of spell and weapon damage by using Powerful Assault. In addition, Powerful Assault only affects up to 4 friendly targets within 10 meters of you, versus Spell Power Cure, which affects 6 people. So we are making a couple of trade-offs here by using Powerful Assault instead of Spell Power Cure, but this is pretty much going to be unavoidable as a stamina healer. So this is probably the set that you're always going to want to wear if you are going to be a stamina healer, Powerful Assault. So we're going with 3 jewelry So I have 2 weapon damage glyphs here, and this is mainly so we can get a lot of weapon damage, so that way we can have very strong heals. We are using our second 5-piece is Hircine's, so we are getting some additional stamina regen out of Hircine's, so that's why we aren't really going with any regen glyphs here. We do have a reduced stamina cost enchant here, and that's just to help us sustain a little bit better. We still do want something there to help out our sustain, because our stamina regen is not going to be as high as a Magicka healer. Magicka healers can typically run up to 2k Magicka regen fairly easily, or close to 2k Magicka regen fairly easily with their food, you know, if you're using Hrothgar or Witch Mothers. However, because of our food choice for this particular build, we won't have that same level of stamina regen available to us. So we want to use either like a reduced stamina cost glyph like I have here, or you want to use a stamina regen glyph. So that's kind of up to you which one you want to do. I'm going with the reduced stamina cost just because some of the abilities that I have are a little bit expensive, so I do want to reduce the cost of those by a little bit. And then to finish off our 5-piece, we're going to keep Powerful Assault on our front bar here. Because this is a quasi-proc, basically it only activates when you cast an Assault ability, we can basically have this on our front bar and then use our Resto Staff on the back bar for Combat Prayer. So that's why we have Powerful Assault. We have 2 daggers here, and we're going with daggers instead of swords, because if you read the Twin Blade and Blunt passives really carefully, it says each sword increases your damage done by 2.5%. Now, I was not entirely certain whether damage done also includes healing done, because those are typically under 2 different types of buffs. So I opted instead to go with daggers instead of swords, just in case the increased damage done is not equal to, does not impact our healing done as well. If it does in fact impact healing done, then going double swords would probably be better than doing double daggers. And for our daggers, we have Nirn honed in our main hand, and this is, again, to kind of help boost our weapon damage so we have stronger heals with the weakening enchant. And then on our offhand, we have an infused weapon damage enchant. This will help us boost our weapon damage even further, as well as our spell damage as well. That will help out our Orbs heal as they're flying across the field, because we do have them on our back bar. So when we cast them on our back bar and swap over to our front bar has more spell damage, and so that'll affect the heals that our Orbs are doing as they're traveling across. So that's really helpful to have here. That just helps out the Orb heal a lot better. And like I mentioned, our second 5-piece is going to be Hircine's. So this is a medium armor set that you can get from Celine's Web. So this has a lot of stamina regen for us. The 2 and 4-piece are both stamina regen. The 3-piece is max stamina. And the 5-piece increases stamina regen by 12% for everybody around 28 meters of you. So obviously Hircine's is not quite as useful because obviously stamina DPS will find it's very useful, but Magicka DPS, stamina regen doesn't matter. For tanks, stamina regen doesn't matter because you can't regen stamina while you're blocking, and so Hircine's is more to help out your stamina DPS as well as yourself. Now, you can go with one of the other typical healing sets, so Mending Mage, so Mending. You can go with something like Worm if you'd like. You can go with Jorvuld's Guidance. You can go with the other one, Infallible Aether, if you'd like. The problem with running one of those 4 sets is that those are light armor sets. Those are more Magicka inclined. So as a result, if you're going to be running one of those 4 sets, your stamina-based heals, Vigor, Soothing Spores, or not Soothing Spores, the Mushroom Heal, those are going to end up being weaker as a result. So we don't want to run either of those 4 sets if we can help it, but in vet trial scenario you might need to do it. Again, this is all going to be dependent on your group, so you know, your other healer, if they're a Magicka healer, would definitely be wearing Spell Power gear, and then either something like Mending or Worm or something, and then it's just up to the raid lead to decide what kind of set is going to be most useful, you know, because that's kind of going to be varying depending on the group composition specifically. Now, because we're going with dual wield on our front bar, we are able to use a Monster Helm set, so that's kind of unique for stamina healers, being able to use a Monster Helm set. That being said, there aren't that many Monster Helm sets that are going to be particularly useful for healers. So the one that I have right here is Sentinel of Rkugamz. This comes from Darkshade Caverns 1. So whenever you heal a friendly target, you have a 10% chance to summon a Dwemer Spider that heals for X amount of health and restores Y amount of stamina to you and your allies within 5 meters every 1 second for 8 seconds. This effect can occur once every 15 seconds. So we're using Sentinel Rkugamz mainly because with this particular build, we're going to be basically in the melee stack. We'll be within the stamina DPS. So having Sentinel Rkugamz helps out their sustain as well as your sustain, in addition to providing some additional heals as well. So you get a little bit more stamina back, plus you're healing them as well whenever this procs. It does have about a 50% proc chance uptime at most, so that's something that you're going to have to keep in mind if you decide to go Sentinel Rkugamz. Now there are other monster helm sets that you can go for, so let me just quickly pull some of them up for you guys. So you can go with Choke Thorns if you like. It gives you magic regen, and then when you use a heal ability, you have a 15% chance to summon a Strangler that heals you or an ally. It's chosen at random, so it could heal the lowest health, it could heal you with full health, it could heal a ranged DPS. You're not exactly sure who it's going to hit. So it heals for X amount of health over 4 seconds. This can occur every 10 seconds. You can get this from Elden Hollow 1. The other one that you can get is going to be Earthgore. Earthgore comes from Bloodroot Forge, so you do need to have a Horns of the Reach DLC in order to get this. When you heal a friendly target that is under 50% health, you conjure up a pool of Quenching Blood, which soaks up one enemy placed effect and heals all friendly targets in the area for X amount of health over 3 seconds. This effect can occur once every 35 seconds. So the downside of Earthgore is, while it's a very, very strong heal, it is at the proc uptime is going to be very, very low because it only happens once every 35 seconds. So Earthgore, it's very situational, but it does have a very, very strong burst heal when you do need it. Then Bogdan is probably the last one that I would consider useful for healers. So it gives you max magicka, so that's not really very helpful for your stamina heals. But when you heal a friendly target, you have a 5% chance to summon a totem for 6 seconds that heals you and your allies within 5 meters for X amount of health every 1 second. This effect can occur once every 6 seconds. So the problem with Bogdan is obviously that 5% chance to summon that totem. So you do need a lot of heal over times ticking in order to have decent uptime on Bogdan. So I used to run with a guild that one of the healers would run Bogdan, and I never saw an uptime more than like 23-24% of the time. So that's that's the big limitation of Bogdan. And there is one other set that you could consider using, but it's going to be more selfish, and that's going to be Engine Guardian. This adds health recovery, which is pretty pointless in trials because you're healing, so there's no point in having health regen if you're getting healed. When you use an ability, you have a 10% chance to summon a Dwemer Automaton that restores health, stamina, or magicka every half second for 6.5 seconds. So this is more for your own sustain. This is a very selfish monster helm set, but this is useful if you are having sustain problems. Stamina healers do have the problem that their sustain is going to be a little bit worse. At least for this build, it's going to be a little bit worse. This can be gotten from Dark Street Caverns 2. And then for our back bar here, we have an Asylum's Perfected Restoration Staff. You can go with a non-perfected staff if you don't have a leaderboard score, you don't have a team that can do hard mode Asylum. We have Powered, but you can go with something like Infused if you'd like, or Nirn. It's kind of up to you which one you would like. I like Powered for the increased healing done while we're on our back bar. So this is mainly here so we can use Combat Prayer, and that's pretty much it. And when we use Combat Prayer, because we have the Restoration Staff, it reduces the cost of our magic and stamina healing abilities by 30%, 27% for a non-perfect staff for 3 seconds. So this basically is what helps us use Orbs more often, because it does reduce the cost of Orbs by 30%. So if we go ahead and take a look at our Orbs cost about 4,500 magicka. So when we have the Asylum staff procced, it's going to cost around 3,200 magicka instead. So that's a fairly nice drop in our magicka cost, so that really helps out our sustain, or magicka sustain, I should say. So while we're on this screen here, we just basically went over most of all the gear stuff here. One thing I forgot is the enchant on your restoration staff. I have absorbed magicka to help out our magicka sustain. We don't really have that big many issues with stamina sustain, even with our slightly lower stamina regen. That's because we do have the Netch to help out our regen, so I prefer to have that. I think the absorbed magicka enchant would be better, just so that way you can get more orbs and more combat prayers out. Let's go over secondary stuff first. So I am a Dark Elf, and I decided to go with a Dark Elf because we get both Magicka and Stamina. Now you can go with preferably a Stamina inclined race, so something like a Redguard, a Khajiit, or a Wood Elf would be better options than Dark Elves if you're going for pure healing ability. However, like I said, I didn't want to give up Combat Prayer, I didn't want to give up our Energy Orbs, so I decided to go with Dark Elves because for that additional bit of Magicka there. You can also go with Argonians if you'd like, because they do have 5% additional damage healing done. They have max health and they do have max Magicka, so you're not getting any stamina boost if you're going with an Argonian, but that extra health will definitely help push you, pretty much make you very, very survivable. You're going to be a very, very tanky healer if you're going with an Argonian and this build. So for our attribute points, so like I said earlier, because we're going with Powerful Assault, we have that additional health set effect. We don't need to put any points into health. Now, my goal was to hit around 20,000 Magicka or so and get as close to 35,000 stamina as I could. So I put 50 points into stamina and 14 points into Magicka. Now, if you want, you can put all your points out of Magicka, put them all into stamina if you'd like. It's kind of up to you. 14 points into Magicka is going to be roughly about 1.7, 1.8k additional Magicka. It's going to be about, I think it's going to be about 1.5 from the attributes, and then you have a couple of passives that help boost that up. So that ends up being close to like 1.7, 1.8k additional Magicka. But that's kind of up to you if you'd like to do it. Like I said, I haven't field tested this build yet, mainly because I'm never going to have a chance to field test a build like this. So it's kind of up to you. Play around with it. If you're finding that your DPS are starved for resources because you're not getting enough orbs out, your minor berserk uptime's not very high because you're running out of Magicka, you might want to shift some points from stamina into Magicka, but I wouldn't drop much lower than the amount of max stamina that I have here, so around 33k or so. If you're a Redguard or a Khajiit or a Wood Elf, you will have a little bit more leeway because you have, well, if you're a Redguard at least, you have more leeway because you have more max stamina. As a Wood Elf and as a Khajiit, you have the same percentage boost to max stamina as a Dark Elf, so you're going to be sitting at around the same amounts of attribute point distributions here as you would on like a Khajiit or a Wood Elf. Hircines, we are going with the ritual to help our healing done. This is going to be pretty useful, mainly for the additional heal from Combat Prayer as well as Energy Orbs, but this does allow us to invest more into weapon damage and regen instead, because that way we have our additional healing done by the ritual. And then for our food, we're going with tri-stat food, so purple food, max health, max Magicka, max stamina. So this is why we don't have as much regen as your typical Magicka healer. Because I wanted to get a little bit more Magicka, because again I didn't want to give up Combat Prayer or Energy Orbs, so we're going with blue food and purple food instead to get that additional Magicka. I was trying to find something that was like max health, max stamina, Magicka regen, but that kind of food doesn't exist in the game, so the next best option would be to increase all three of our base pools instead. So this does result in lower regen, so you will have to heavy attack fairly. You might need to heavy attack on your dual wield bar in order to get resources back, but we are a Warden, so we do have Netch to increase our regen, so I am fairly optimistic that with maybe one heavy attack on your front bar each time, you won't have to suffer that many resource problems there. One thing I did forget to mention while we were going over gear is our armor traits. So for our armor traits, I'm going with Divines on our small pieces with max stamina enchants, then prismatic enchants with infused on our large pieces. So pretty much the standard for healers, just instead of magic enchants, you're going with stamina enchants instead. Now for our skills, let's go over our front bar first. So our front bar, we have Soothing Spores. This is going to be your burst heal. Bone Surge, this is going to be a shield as well as a synergy source. Because this build plays into the melee range, your tank and your stamina DPS will be able to activate this synergy, so you will be able to help proc Alkosh more often. Plus you give your stamina a damage shield for 100% of their max health. Plus you give them Major Vitality, which helps boost the healing that they receive, so that indirectly boosts your healing ability. So that's why we have Bone Surge here. We have Vigor. This is going to be your primary heal. This is a heal over time. Deadly Cloak. This isn't here for the damage. This will help proc your enchants, but this is mainly here for that damage reduction. The 25% damage reduction from AoE attacks. Then Ring of Preservation, this is mainly here for the Fighter's Guild passive that boosts our weapon damage by 3%. But like I said, because we are in melee range, you can actually throw down Ring of Preservation and give your allies minor protection for 20 seconds as well as minor endurance. So that helps out a little bit with your stamina, DPS survivability, as well as your tank survivability as well, with that additional minor protection. Then for our ultimate, we have Aggressive Horn here, but I will go over one potential configuration for ultimates after we go over our back bar. So our back bar is going to be where we have all of our buffs. So we have our Netch. This is going to be our primary source of stamina sustain here. Green Lotus, this is another healing ability. So whenever we do a light attack, we restore a certain amount of health. When a fully charged heavy attack restores even more health for 20 seconds. We have Comet Prayer. This really doesn't heal all that much. This is here for the minor berserker. Like I said in the beginning of the video, and I've reiterated a lot, I didn't want to give that up. That's a very powerful buff for your DPS, and one healer cannot possibly maintain a good minor berserk uptime, so we want to maintain Combat Prayer. Ice Fortress, this gives you your major resistance buffs, as well as gives it to everybody within 8 meters of you, so this is very nice to have. You also gain minor protection, which helps out your own survivability as well. You could go with the other morph, which is Expansive Frost Cloak. It does decrease the cost, and it gives it a much wider radius, so that's kind of up to you what you want to do. If you don't feel like you need a minor protection, then I would say go with Expansive Frost Cloak instead. Then Energy Orbs, so this is actually a pretty strong heal, even on a Stamina Warden healer, despite the fact that it scales off of Magicka. This is mainly here for that combustion synergy, for the resource return. Like I said, I didn't want to give that up at all. But the heal actually isn't that bad compared to like a Magicka Templar. It didn't drop as much as I thought it would. So this is still going to be one of your strongest heals, even as a Stamina healer. So definitely want to try to make sure one of these is out at all times on the field. Then our ultimate is going to be Enchanted Forest. You can go with the other one, which is the Thicket heal. Now, I did say there is one other configuration of ultimates that I think might be useful, and that's going to be going with Flawless Dawnbreaker on the front for that additional weapon damage to help our heals out a little bit more. And then on the back bar here, you would put your Aggressive Warhorn instead. So you'd look something like this instead for your bars. So that's one configuration that you might want to use. I like the idea of having that Enchanted Forest on the back bar for those emergency heals, because the heals on your ultimate heals scale off of your max stat, not Magicka or anything like that. So Enchanted Forest is going to be a very strong burst heal, and it's pretty cheap too. It's only 90 ultimate, and if you get that 20 ultimate back every time you use it, then it really only costs 70 ultimate. Alright, so now, so the thing with stamina healers is that you don't really have that much flexibility when it comes to alternative flex spots. So out of all these abilities that you have here, I would say Circle of Protection is going to be one flex spot. Nothing back here I would consider flex. So you really only have one flex spot here. You could also consider Bone Surge as a flex spot, but I like the idea of having a shield even as a stamina healer, so I don't consider Bone Surge to be a flex spot, but it's kind of up to you. You can change it out if you would like. So you do have a couple of options when it comes to this flex spot here. Now the problem is a lot of our abilities will use Magicka instead. So for example, Healing Seed and its morph uses Magicka, Living Vines and its morph uses Magicka. There's not that many stamina based healings, but there are several utilities that you might find helpful. So for example, Polar Wind might be useful for you because it does heal people for 12% of your max health. This is a health based heal though, so it's not very strong compared to like on a Warden tank. Go with Crystallized Shield. Either morph, Shimmering Shield is going to be much more useful for you compared to Crystallized Slab. This gives you your major heroism, as well as absorb any sort of projectile that you might end up getting hit with in a raid. It's not that expensive, so it's nice to have. You can also go with Frozen Device if you'd like as a chain. If you want to help out your tanks, it's not really necessary, but it is an option there. There's not really too much else here, to be honest, in terms of what you can use. The other skill that I would consider possibly using is going to be Sanguine Altar for that minor lifesteal, just because it is a cheap skill to use. It does have a cast time, so do be careful when you decide to use it. Plus that synergy is a percentage heal, so you can see here it heals for 51% of anybody's max health, and they can activate it twice because the duration is 46 seconds long and the cooldown is 20 seconds, so you can actually activate the synergy twice per altar, I believe. So those are kind of your flex spots there. Now for our CP points, this is another something else that I tried to figure out how to do. So for our green CPs, we have 64 into Mooncalf, 49 to Arcanist, 56 into Tenacity. Obviously Mooncalf, we want additional stamina regen. Arcanist is a little bit of a head scratcher for some people. Like I said, I wanted to make sure we have enough energy orbs and combat prayers. So that's why we have Arcanist to help out our magicka regen. And Tenacity, obviously, for that resource return. And then the remaining points, I kind of put 31 to Shadow Ward, 20 into Tumbling, and 20 into Warlord. You can kind of split those up however you'd like. It's kind of up to you. This is just what I found to be fit all of the jump points. For our blue CPs, this is pretty much going to be a mirror image of a magicka healer. So 100 into Blessed, then we have 100 into Precise Strikes, and then 40 into Elfborn. Again, for our critical heals, healing done, those are all pretty strong. And every other node is really focused on DPS, so we're not really a DPSer. And none of our heals are based off of damage done, so it's better off just to put 40 points into Elfborn so we help out our critical heals with Orbs instead. And for our red CPs, I like to take a one-size-fits-most scenarios approach. So basically a balanced approach when it comes to my red CPs. This might not be the case. For certain trials you might want to go with a different CP configuration just to give yourself more survivability. So for example, if you're going to be running HRC, Hell Raw, you're going to want to put more points into physical resistance buffs. So something like Hardy, Ironclad, Medium Armor Focus to help improve your physical resistance. Take them out of things like Elemental Defender and Thick Skin because there's not really that many damage over time effects in Hell Raw. That's up to you though. I have 61 to Ironclad, 51 to Thick Skin, and 64 into both Hardy and Elemental Defender. Alright, now that we have gone over all of the gear stuff, let's talk about how the Stamina Warden healer kind of plays out. So obviously you're going to want to keep up all of your buffs on your back bar. So that's going to be your Netch, that's going to be your Green Lotus, that's going to be your Ice Fortress or Expansive Frost Cloak. Now what I think is going to work best is if you basically you're going to be on your front bar for the whole time here. So you're going to be going, Vigor for your healing. You're going to be using Soothing Spore when you need a burst heal. Keep Deadly Cloak up as much as you can. That damage mitigation is huge for your survivability. Then if you are using Circle of Protection, throw that down every 20 seconds, and that's kind of basically dependent on what you have on your flex spot there. So if you have like Sanguine Altar, you throw it down every 45 seconds or whatever it is. So it's basically play with the timing based on the flex spot that you put there. Bone Shield, because it does use stamina, don't try to use it all the time. Don't try to keep it up 100% of the time, basically. Because the synergy cooldown is every 20 seconds, you can use it every 20 seconds, or if you are anticipating damage coming in. The shield itself is not going to be as strong as Harness Magicka or Dampen Magicka, so that's kind of the downside, but it will help shield you a little bit from any sort of incoming damage. Then, like I said, Soothing Spores is your burst heal. Then while you're on your back bar, you're going to want to go on your back bar ideally every 8 seconds. Actually, let's go ahead and enter combat real quick, just so I can see what the magicka regen looks like while we're in combat. Okay, so the idea is to basically try to use Combat Prayer on the cooldown, so that's every 8 seconds. So, let's say we are... So you can see here that, even with this build, we're not really getting that many combat prayers out. And we will need to heavy attack on our back bar to get our magicka back. So that's something that you're going to want to keep in mind when you're playing this build out. So you saw there, let's get 100% magicka back. Combat prayer followed by 2 orbs. Invalid location. Alright, let's try this again. Combat prayer followed by 2 orbs. already drains more than about half of our magicka, so that's something that you're going to want to keep in mind. You know, so what I would probably recommend is when you do go onto your back bar, do a heavy pull into a combat prayer. It'll let me do it. Okay, so you have to do a heavy pull into your combat prayer. So something like that would probably be what your back bar rotation would look like. So basically it'd be light weave all that, so that way you make sure to get your heals off with your green Lotus while you're on your back bar. So let's say you just swap to your back bar here, you'd go something like this. And swap to your front bar and continue your healing rotation. So the important thing is you're going to want to try to do that heavy pull before each combat prayer for that magicka, and then do one orb. You can do two if your DPS and tanks are starved for resources, but as you saw, 2 energy orbs is fairly expensive on our magicka pool. But we still do want to try to get them out as much as we can. So hopefully that'll work out for you guys. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to field test it, and I doubt I ever will, just because of the way the groups that I run in. We're typically more serious. We typically are, you know, trying to teach people, and having a stamina warden healer isn't really conducive to basically successful teaching runs for vet trials. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys found it informative. I had a lot of fun theory crafting this, so hope you guys enjoyed the build for those of you guys who want to try it out. And I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.